Anyway, there's more on this shortly, but there's statistical shenanigans. But in the meantime, diplomacy news in the Times, Dave. And I'll be honest, when I look at Joe Biden, I think more diplodocus than diplomacy. But what's he done?
Well, two old men. Well, this is... Joe Biden threatens US-China détente by calling Xi Jinping, is that how to pronounce it?
Xi Jinping.
Yeah. It depends on which region of China you're from.
Yes, that's right.
A dictator. President Biden said President Xi was very upset when the US shot down a spy balloon in February. Well, I can't help wondering whether there was this little fake Richard Branson, plastic Richard Branson. I mean, it's weird, isn't it? Because on the one hand, they're stopping information, so people in China don't get access to the internet.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, they're gathering information by sending out balloons to float over...
Well, there is... I mean, you're right. China is... I mean, in some respects, I have previously... I think I've said out loud, you know, people have said this about Ukraine and Russia. You now know how you would have reacted to Nazi, threat in the 1930s, you know, if you know now. But I've been saying that about China for some time. You know, there is clearly the same level of threat, but what we miss is that they are operating on an entirely different dimension. Traditional warfare has all been about traditional armaments, whereas China is entirely about information.
And it's a culture of cruelty anyway, isn't it? I mean, you can't blame the people, but if you look back at Chinese history, there's so much cruelty.
Well, it's an enormous population, isn't it? And so you know, that always seems to lead to an extraordinarily callous form of rule.
Death by 1,000 cuts and stuff.
I mean, this story, thinking about Joe Biden's age and his track record for saying things, it could have been worse, what he said. And in terms of how to pronounce his name, just as an aside, these days I get my phone to read the stories to me as I'm driving in, and they pronounced his name as 11 Jinping.
Ah, 11 Jinping. That could be 11 Ping. I suppose he was the first 11, at least, anyway. So
I'm torn with this one, because on the one hand, I think we should just stop doing business with China, stop buying their stuff.
Good luck with that.
And then, and then they won't be able to do the stuff. And then
that
the other thing...
really mess with my Amazon Prime subscription.
But otherwise, just integrate, you know, and sort of share culture and just try and, you know, get people more... They've got
I remember 20 years ago in the pub arguing very much an optimistic in that mode, you know, that liberalising trade with China was bound.
I must say, I'm encouraged by the fact that they're getting them, like they're making all those islands in the China Sea. Because I think it's not a military thing. I think they're just making, like, fake, cheap Maldives. And we'll be able to go on, like, cheap package holidays.